I've always been optimistic about, and there's all sorts of examples of how technology and the democratization of knowledge and stories and all that stuff actually has toppled totalitarian regimes. And I tend to be an optimist about the truth getting out. But when you control institutions that actively censor the telling of those stories, that's the less optimistic version of that story. And you've written a lot about this. Talk about sort of the propaganda that I guess you call it the Castro model, but the way to control the cultural narrative as a key to the ongoing success of Cuba, not just surviving in Cuba, but exporting that model across Latin America.
Yes, before that, let me tell you that I share your optimism regarding the truth coming out eventually. Because what we've seen during the last year is social media. The government made a decision, and in the end, they will regret it, to allow Cubans to have cell phones. Before, it was very controlled. And they started to gradually open up the internet for two reasons. Number one, they wanted money. And this is a huge industry that is paid for by the diaspora. And second, they couldn't keep it up, and then tried to give the idea that they're reforming. So these stories, these films from the hospitals and the debacle all over Cuba are coming out every day on social media, and you're seeing them. And the mainstream media, like the New York Times and others, who have, participated in this self-censorship, are starting to understand that they can't keep it up because the contrast in the reality that people are seeing is too much. So I'm hopeful with that. And it's an irony that, one thing that they did with one intention is now undermining them so much.
Yeah, it's hard.
The protest.
Yeah, I mean, and let's talk about propaganda, but I'll reinforce your optimism. I feel like it's hard to keep people down, and Cuba is an exception to that rule because it's been such a long-lasting, devastating model. And I'm optimistic with protests this summer that things are starting to break up and we can get there. But you have to give Castro credit. Like, how did he survive so long?
Well, my book on Venezuela actually is about that, in a sense. How does one of the chapters is what I called Cuba's core competence. I don't think we got into this in the Oslo Freedom Forum because there wasn't time, but I think that is really important to understand how Cuba has been able to survive, despite the fact that it was a parasitic economy from very early on, because Cuba was self-dependent on food supply, was a thriving economy in many ways, even despite the Batista dictatorship. But very early on, with the imposition of centralized socialist planning, the economy became parasitic, first of the Soviet Union and then of Venezuela.